The World Health Organization, the WHO, they have now officially passed this controversial pandemic accord. It is now in place globally, except here in the United States. Now, this international agreement, it is legally binding. They say it's, again, voluntary, but if you're part of it, it's legally binding. And the whole thing started back in 2021 during the response to COVID-19. What this agreement does, at least on the surface, right, it creates a new program for global sharing of pathogen data and samples on anything that could allegedly spark a pandemic. It also makes it so that any pharmaceutical manufacturers that are part of this whole system, 20% of their products have to be given for so-called equitable distribution. What does that mean? Well, it means that we're going to be effectively bankrolling the developing world, 20% additional cost probably for everybody else. This also creates a much broader system, by the way, overall of countries, part of the agreement to also have surveillance and stuff in place for potential outbreaks, how to detect it, how to respond to it. Now, Tedros, the head of the World Health Organization, declared that the pandemic accord is now official. And he wrote on X that it's official. The pandemic accord is officially adopted by the World Health Assembly. My warmest congratulations to WHO member states for their commitment to keep their people and the world safer. What a moment in global health history together. Now, as we know, the United States, at least currently, is not part of the World Health Organization. Donald Trump withdrew us from the organization back in January. You might remember he did the same thing during his first term in office at the very end when the whole pandemic was hitting, pulled us out. Joe Biden brought us back into the WHO. Trump pulled us out yet again. We will see how permanent it is, but there's some moves to make it permanent we'll discuss in a bit. But much of the world right now, they are part of this. This pandemic accord applies to most countries in the world except the United States. Now, RFK Jr. gave more context as to why the United States withdrew from the World Health Organization and the U.S. position on the pandemic treaty. This was during an address to the World Health Assembly earlier this week. Watch.
The WHO has become mired in bureaucratic bloat, entrenched paradigms, conflicts of interest, and international power politics. While the United States has provided the lion's share of the organization's funding historically, other countries, such as China, have exerted undue influence over its operations in ways that serve their own interests and not particularly the interests of the global public. Global cooperation on health is still critically important to President Trump and myself, but it isn't working very well under the WHO, as the failures of the COVID era demonstrate. The WHO has not even come to terms with its failures during COVID, let alone made significant reforms. Instead, it has doubled down with the pandemic agreement, which will lock in all of the dysfunctions of the WHO pandemic response. Well, we're not going to participate in that. We need to reboot the whole system, as we are doing in the United States. Here in the United States.
Now, this raises some important points. Among the broader concerns of the pandemic accord is that it undermines some elements of national sovereignty, right? The power of an individual state, they have now given some of those powers to a globalist organization. Now, you could say, again, it's voluntary. They're part of the World Health Organization. They did this willingly. It gives a lot more power to this global government institution. Again, countries have effectively surrendered some of their own sovereignty to this. And in the past, the WHO has been unable to demonstrate its independence from the Chinese Communist Party, raising concerns that as countries have surrendered some of their own sovereignty to the WHO has in turn surrendered its sovereignty to the Chinese Communist Party. Remember when Trump pulled the United States out of it? That was the big issue. They did big research, they did studies, they asked questions to him. There was an entire investigative process, and they determined the World Health Organization could not demonstrate that it was independent from the CCP, meaning the CCP puppeteers it. And that also raises concerns over how the CCP may be able to use this to basically control the health policies of the entire world in its favor, to an extent. Now, RFK Jr. also pointed out some of the undue influence the CCP has over the world, over this WHO. This was in his World Health Assembly address. Watch this.
China have exerted undue influence over its operations in ways that serve their own interests and not particularly the interests of the global public. This all became obvious during the COVID pandemic when the WHO, under pressure from China, suppressed reports at critical junctures of human-to-human transmission.
And on that point, after the U.S. withdrew, the World Health Organization was facing an existential crisis. In fact, even recently, they were saying that they may not be able to make it with their current financing. Even right now, that's still kind of the case. That mainly happened because a huge chunk of its funding used to come from the United States. As we find out, we're paying for just about everything on the face of the planet. The World Health Organization was also being bankrolled by American taxpayers. But what happened? Well, the Chinese Communist Party, as many people were concerned would happen, that was one of the arguments for not pulling out, the CCP swooped in and bailed out the WHO to an extent, not fully. The CCP is donating about $100 million a year to the WHO for the next 5 years. And there are concerns, as we've seen in allegations in the past, that this money could have strings attached. The CCP is not doing this for no reason. They're not doing it out of the goodness of their hearts. This could result in the CCP gaining even more influence over the global institution, which now has some degree of global control over health policies. And these concerns are also being raised right here in the United States. In fact, Representative Tom Tiffany, he noted this as well. He said there needs to be a stronger policy in place to ensure that the United States is never again brought back into the WHO. And he's calling for Congress to pass legislation to make sure that Trump's withdrawal stays there, that it's permanent. Here's what he wrote on X. He said, President Trump withdrew the U.S. from the WHO, and Congress must codify this decision ASAP. We should never spend another day or dime in this corrupt China-first organization. Now, will that happen? We shall see. It is likely that a lot of members of Congress would vote on that. The issue of the WHO tends to be kind of partisan, mainly because Trump pulled us out of it. So we shall see. Now, in other news, President Donald Trump met with the South African president. This is Cyril Ramaphosa. This was during a press event in the White House. And during the talks, Trump raised his concerns, let's say, that the government in South Africa has not taken strong enough actions to prevent the seizures of land and the killings of farmers. On this point, the political party of the president is not the main one saying, kill the Boer and so on. They're not the ones doing this, but he did sign into law a policy in South Africa, signed it, which allows for the seizure of land without compensation. And so you could say that he's not, calling for the murder of white farmers, but he did sign a policy into law that allows their properties to be seized by the state. Now, as part of the discussion, the White House put together a collection of videos showing these calls for violence from one of South Africa's communist political factions. There are two main political factions in South Africa doing these kinds of things. This one, the Economic Freedom Fighters, this is about a quarter of the country, about 25% in terms of vote. And they openly call for the killing of white farmers, and they state that killing is necessary for communist revolution. They're singing songs, people say it's from apartheid era. Keep in mind that in the backdrop of the apartheid era, even with, again, Nelson Mandela, he was a communist. His wife used to murder people. She would put tires around their necks and light them on fire. Left out of many conversations, by the way. You could say it's from that era, and they openly state that in the future, there is no guarantee that they will not try to carry out mass killings. This is just part of the video. Watch.
Mr. President, I must say that we have, wait. We have thousands of stories talking about it. Sure. And we have documentaries, we have news stories, and that. Turn the lights down and just put this on. It's right behind you. Johan.
There's nothing this parliament can do. With or without you, people are going to occupy land. We require no permission from you, from the president, from no one. We don't care. We can do whatever you want to do. Who are you to tell us whether we can occupy land or not?
There must be killing, because the killing is part of a revolutionary act. Shoot to kill. Yamasa. Kill the poor, the farmer. Kill the poor, the farmer. Brr, pa, pa, brr, pa.
Now, look, leading up to this, it was interesting. Right before Trump jumped into that video, said, dim the lights, showtime effectively, the South African president was saying, you know, if Mr. Trump is willing to listen, we've brought here the ministers, the Minister of Agriculture, who by the way, is a white African and part of one of the opposition parties to the president. So you could say they don't get along, but they're not part of the communist faction. Says effectively, you know, if Mr. Trump is willing to listen, we will show to him that this is not happening. Trump plays that video. And at the end of it, the South African president says he's never seen some of these things, including the mass. They again have the memorials of all the farmers killed. He says they will look into it. As the discussion goes on, the South African president claimed that the speeches and the calls for violence, he says they are not the position held by his government, his party, right? He noted that that type of speech is protected, though, under the country's constitution. Now, Trump pushed back on this. He said, look, it's not your party. It's not your party, but these calls for violence, they are resulting in people being killed. People are being murdered as a result of this. Watch.
Because what you saw, the speeches that were being made, one, that is not government policy. We have a multi-party democracy in South Africa that allows people to express themselves, political parties to adhere to various policies, and in many cases, or in some cases, those policies do not go along with government policy. Our government policy is completely against what he was saying, even in the parliament. And they're a small minority party, which is allowed to exist in terms of our constitution.
But you do allow them to take land.
No.
You do allow them to take land.
Nobody can take land.
And then when they take the land, they kill the white farmer. And when they kill the white farmer, nothing happens to them.
No, there is
nothing happens to them.
There is criminality in our country. People who do get killed, unfortunately through criminal activity, are not only white people. Majority of them are black people. And we have now been utilized.
The farmers are not black. I don't
now
say that's good or bad, but the farmers are not black. If we had real reporters, they'd be covering it. But
now, as these discussions go on, the South African president notes that the majority of people killed are not white Africans. He's like, look, black Africans get killed too. South Africa has one of the highest murder rates on the face of the planet. It's one of the top few in terms of murder rates. And also, you know, if you want to talk about numbers, the white African farmers, they represent about 1% of the killings in the country, meaning a lot of people get killed there. Now, on that point, though, the other argument is a lot of the killings of white farmers are not documented. They don't document them. And that is a big problem, especially because in remote areas, isolated areas, it's a silent genocide, some would claim. The government does not really do anything about it. And when they do get killed, they often don't even count it. So we don't really know the full picture. As the discussions go on, Trump pulls out a stack of papers of many of the recent victims. And he has the pictures of white farmers who were brutally murdered in the politicized attacks. And he goes after the evidence on this and just says, death, death, death. And he says, I will give these to you. And he hands these images of recently killed South African farmers to the president. Watch.
We would also like to talk about, including, of course, trade matters, investment matters. So the issues that concern you as the United States.
Those are all recent. Those are all deaths.
Yeah, in many ways, I mean, one should say you are a partner of South Africa. And
Now, during the event, Trump also brought many South Africans with him. Now it's his friends, people close to him. He notes that Elon Musk is from South Africa. Elon Musk is a South African. And of course, during the discussions, Trump's like, I'm not going to make Elon say anything. I'm not going to make Elon speak. I think he already gets enough pressure effectively. I'm not going to like put him at the front line of this too. But Trump also brought out witnesses who were able to speak directly about what their families are suffering under the persecution in South Africa. Watch.
I grew up in an area in South Africa that is a farmland area, Polokwane.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there is some issues up there. Obviously, my dad was a property developer as well as a part-time farmer. And yeah, some of these buddy farmers got killed. The farm is still going. My brothers run it, but it's a constant battle with farms they're trying to burn the farms down to chase you away. So it is a concern to try and make a living as a farmer. And at the end, without farmers, there's no food on the plate. So we need.
Now, in terms of what's happening in South Africa, there's a few other parts to it. People have pointed out, of course, the white South African, the Afrikaners, they were like Dutch settlers there. They came in like 1600s, and people are like, well, they're on stolen land. And the question is, how long do you have to live somewhere generationally before you're considered a legitimate resident? By that same argument, no American is legitimate. I'd question the entire legitimacy of most of the Ottoman Empire, the former Ottoman Empire, if you want to make that argument. If you want to talk about from that perspective, a lot of people are illegitimate. Everybody's on stolen land, if you want to go back far enough. But the issue for South Africa is this. 80% of the farms are run by the South Africans, the Afrikaners, the white Africans. And all of them right now are looking to leave. They're looking to flee the country. A lot of them are trying to go to Australia, and a lot of them are trying to go to the United States. Now, you could say, great, South Africa is finally getting rid of the white people. The people who came here during the 1600s, all that stolen land will be returned to the South Africans. If that happens, you're probably going to have a massive famine. This is a crisis for South Africa because every time that they've tried replacing the owners of the farms, they fail. It has happened over and over and over again, to the extent that the South African president has even put steps in place to try to prevent the leaving of these individuals. And a lot of them right now, totally across the board, are looking to come to the United States or Australia. If they leave, South Africa, almost without a doubt, will have a famine. Almost without a doubt. And so they are facing a crisis with this, and that's what Trump is saying to them effectively too, is like, look, we'll take all of them if you don't want them. And if that's what the case is. But it will cause problems for your country if they leave, because this is your food. These are the people who grow your food. And that was also raised, of course, during the debates. We'll see what happens, of course. Again, the South African president notes that his party, they oppose these types of things. It's very controversial in South Africa. There actually have been lawsuits against the people calling for the killings of the Boers. Let's put it this way. In South African law, calls for violence, calls to carry out violence, it is illegal. But just like you've seen a lot of the mainstream media in the United States, they're making excuses for this. They're saying that that's not what they actually mean. They're saying these are just political songs that go back to the apartheid area, and they do not represent actual calls for violence. If you have a guy publicly stating, in addition to that, saying that killing is a revolutionary act and you can't be afraid of killing, I'd question the legitimacy of those claims. But the point is, in South Africa, this has been challenged. They have actually tried going against this, but they haven't been able to stop it. And that's where the country is right now. Now, in other news, despite all the controversy over Qatar giving a plane to the United States, many people saying, how dare Trump accept a foreign gift that's going to be used temporarily as the new Air Force One, the offer has now been accepted. It has gone through. And remember, this all came about because of delays over the Boeing Air Force One. They want to build 2 of them. still in production, and they're now delaying that to 2027. The original deadline for that was Trump's first term in office. They delayed again under Biden, and now they're saying 2027, meaning basically they're not going to have the airplanes delivered until Trump's ready to leave office, if even then. And even then, they're also tacking on additional costs on top of the original contract. And so Trump's like, geez, I can't rely on you guys. And so look, this is years after the delivery date, and the Pentagon now has announced officially it has taken possession of the 747 from Qatar. Wall Street Journal says the Pentagon said Wednesday that it had formally accepted a donated $400 million luxury airliner from Qatar that President Trump has said will serve as Air Force One. And they say, quote, the Secretary of Defense has accepted a Boeing 747 from Qatar in accordance with all federal rules and regulations. Pentagon spokesperson Sean Parnell said in a statement. The Air Force said it was preparing to award a contract to modify the jet so it can serve as Air Force One, meaning the retrofitting is going to be done by the military, not by some private company like Boeing. It did not provide further details about the plans, saying information related to the aircraft was classified. On that point, it also adds, quote, the Department of Defense will work to ensure proper security measures and functional mission requirements are considered for an aircraft used to transport the President of the United States, Parnell said. Now, the government will need to do some work on the plane to bring it up to standards to operate as Air Force One. The presidential airplane needs additional security measures, many of which we're not even told about, right? It needs to have a lot of retrofitting to be able to serve that role. Probably things like electronic warfare hardening, probably like some types of defense systems and the like. It will allegedly be ready for use by the end of the year, they claim. In the meantime, the deal for Boeing to make the two new planes to work as Air Force One, those are still in place. Currently, the contracts are over cost, won't be done again until around 2027. If they stay on deadline, which they have not done before with this contract, and when or if those do come through, this is the big controversy. The airplane given from Qatar to the Pentagon will be transferred to Trump's presidential library. Trump has pointed to the Reagan Library, Ronald Reagan. If you go there in Southern California, I've been there, it's a great library. If you go to the Reagan Library, they have the retired Air Force One plane, and they also have the retired Marine One helicopter in the library. People are saying that Trump, if it's transferred to his library, could personally use it. What is not said by a lot of the media is, were he to do that, he would have to buy it from them. And that'd just be like buying a plane anyways. The issue of the plane was also raised during Trump's discussion with the presidents of South Africa, by the way. Watch this.
I'm sorry, I don't have a plane to give you.
I wish you did. I take it. I would take it. If your country offered the United States Air Force a plane, I would take it.
Okay.
Now, in terms of the jet itself, some additional controversies. Some people are saying, well, this could represent security gaps. They're saying that they could install spying software on it. I'll just be blunt. People who say that don't understand how security works. Even corporate offices, they will have teams come in and you can scan for like listening devices. There are devices you can use to find them. I know people personally who work in that industry. They'll look, for example, into like electronic equipment, and they'll look for listening devices. I don't think Qatar would have any interest in doing that because it would be stupid of them, and it would be easily found. It would be very risky, and it would basically ruin all of their contracts and everything else. If you want to talk about actual interest of Qatar, this is a valid concern. They're known to buy influence. They are known to buy influence. In fact, unfortunately, it is true. On the conservative side of the news industry, a lot of news outlets accept a lot of money from Qatar. I don't. As you notice, I'm but a humble gold merchant. I don't have a lot of advertisement, although I would love to have some, don't get me wrong. But unfortunately, a lot of media do take a lot of money from Qatar. And many people argue that is with the intent of influencing what is said. Qatar is very big on influence. They're very big on buying influence. The other big thing people point to is that, well, gee, it's not going to take a year. It's going to take like 3 years. And Trump might as well wait for the Boeing airplanes to go through because the timeline is going to be relatively the same. It depends who you ask. I'd say, to be honest, it's just a lot of... it's just people making partisan statements, in my opinion. If you have the military, the Pentagon, doing the retrofitting, and they want to fast track it, the Pentagon can do it. And so I think there's a lot of noise. On the other hand, though, there is a chance it could be stalled. Look at Trump's attempts to build the wall during his first term in office. He could have done it very quickly, but because of delays and controversy and everything else, it never finished. So if it is done without delay and without lawsuits and everything else, they can probably do it within the year. If they face lawsuits and challenges and everything else, probably not. But the key point with this is it's being done through the Pentagon. And if the U.S. military wants to rush it, they can. And again, because of divisions within our political system, they can't necessarily block the Pentagon from doing that. So again, I don't think it's going to be delayed. Now, on another note, though, DOGE has been out of the spotlight recently, but they've still been working behind the scenes. During an interview with Bloomberg earlier this week, Elon Musk, he explained the pace of the cuts they've been making. He also clarified the role of DOGE, right, the Department of Government Efficiency, as an advisory group within the government that can recommend cuts. Watch this.
DOGE is an advisory group. We are doing the best we can as an advisory group. The progress made thus far as an advisory group is excellent. I don't think any advisory group has done better in the history of advisory groups of the government. Now, we do not make the laws, nor do we control the judiciary, nor do we control the executive branch. We are simply advisors. In that context, we are doing very well. Beyond that, we cannot take action beyond that because we are not some sort of imperial dictator of the government. There are three branches of government that are to some degree opposed to that level of cost savings. But nonetheless.
Now, Elon Musk also noted that in the future, he plans to scale back his political spending. Watch.
I think in terms of political spending, I'm going to do a lot less in the future.
And why is that?
I think I've done enough.
Is it because of blowback?
Well, if I see a reason to do political spending in the future, I will do it. I do not currently see a reason.
Now, in terms of what Elon Musk is saying here, I saw how a lot of media framed his statements. And, the framing of it, as you might have seen, if you were watching Twitter, if you were watching what a lot of media said, they said that Elon Musk appears dissatisfied with Republicans. They're saying that Elon Musk feels like he got burned by them. They're saying no Republicans will ever win again if they don't start moving forward with the cuts that the DOGE department has recommended. I watched Elon Musk's interview. At no point does he say that. At no point does he say that. The only reference you can have is a last video clip I showed you where he says, I currently don't see a reason in terms of political donations. I would make that point. I think Musk, like a lot of conservatives, are not necessarily Republican. You have a voting bloc that is pro-Trump. And a lot of the MAGA movement is not necessarily pro-Republican. And that's going to be a big issue for the midterms, by the way. They have found that a lot of people who like Donald Trump do not necessarily just vote Republican no matter what. Elon Musk, on his part, used to be more of a Democrat. He used to be more on that side. He has gone more pro-MAGA, mainly because a lot of the cultural debates, especially the trans issue, and he also seems to believe that government spending is a big problem. Now, a lot of the establishment media, they've tried creating an image of controversy within the White House. They're saying that Elon Musk doesn't like everybody and they don't like him. They're saying that Trump's cabinet hates Elon Musk, that Musk's leaving disgraced, that he failed. The White House has continually come out and said this is a bunch of lies. This is absolutely untrue. This is just media lying. And what they've done with this effectively is they have, hey, inside source familiar with Elon Musk's thinking, like, or whatever that is. A guy who knows how Elon Musk thinks says this. They have a lot of anonymous sources like that. And what they've done is they've taken all these anonymous sources and all these rumors and all these claims, and they've used those, even when they're debunked, to establish a meta-narrative, right? They've established a meta-narrative on the foundation of questionable reporting. It's not solid. The Trump administration has repeatedly said that there's none of these issues. Elon Musk, again, everywhere Trump goes, Elon Musk tends to be with him. They seem to be not only working very well together, they actually seem to be pretty good friends. And also, you could argue on the other side that it is true, while DOGE has managed to cut a lot of spending, they've also received a lot of pushback, especially when it comes to lawsuits and a lot of the cuts being gummed up in the court system right now. And he also clarified again that DOGE is effectively an advisory board. They are a government advisory system. They can recommend spending cuts. They can't do it themselves. A lot of the narratives you hear about Elon Musk going in and cutting things, it's not true, because that's not how things work in terms of actual operations. They recommend cuts, and the spending cuts are done by the agencies themselves. That's the truth of it. On the other side, too, they're saying that Elon Musk is leaving because he's angry. They're saying he's leaving disgraced. He's leaving because he failed. None of that's true. His actual role is he's a temporary government employee. Trump used a special status to bring him on, and that has a limit, I believe, of 130 days. The 130 days are up. And so in terms of the actual legal basis of Elon Musk being hired by the government, it had a time limit. That time limit is up, and that's the real nature of him leaving right now, right? If, again, go and read, you can look at the law itself. It's 130 days, I believe. So time's up. Now on to another topic, though. And real quick, though, by the way, the DOGE department's going to stay temporarily as well. The creation of the DOGE department was, I believe, for 2 years. And so it is going to end right before the 250th anniversary of the United States. And when Trump wants to have this big celebration of America, DOGE ends right before that. And Trump wants to declare like the new the new Independence Day, effectively, when that happens. But like, on to another point. It's being raised that operations to deport people they're really, really expensive. And the Trump administration is looking for new sources to cover the costs of all these deportations. I'll be talking more about this after we come back from a quick break.
Experts agree. One of the best ways to protect against financial uncertainty is to diversify your portfolio. Learn how physical gold and silver can secure your retirement funds from today's economic challenges with a gold IRA from American Hartford Gold. You can safeguard your wealth with no penalties or taxes when you transfer your current qualifying retirement accounts. Call now and our precious metals specialists will send you a free information kit, no cost or obligation. American Hartford Gold, a trusted industry leader with an A+ from the Better Business Bureau, has a 5-star rating from thousands of happy clients. Whether you are getting physical precious metals in a gold IRA or delivered to your doorstep, we offer only the highest quality gold and silver. For your peace of mind, we also offer a no-fee buyback commitment, a low-price guarantee, along with free shipping and free insurance. So don't wait. Call the number on your screen today and secure your financial future.
Welcome back. Operations to deport a lot of people. It turns out that every single one of them is really expensive to deport. It costs over $17,000 American taxpayer money. Every time they deport one person, the U.S. government has to pay $17,000. There's the old blues song, it's cheaper to keep her. Right? You ever hear that song? It's cheaper to keep her. And that could apply to illegal aliens as well. $17,000 for every one of them. This is also leading to some additional programs, though. Trump is saying, well, maybe it's cheaper to keep her, but you know what? Maybe we can find other ways to cover those costs. And some of the programs, well, it includes giving illegal immigrants a free airplane ride to anywhere they want to go and $1,000 to leave the country. And, you know, they're creating some additional pressure on that, including really strong legal threats, which we'll get into in a bit. But it also includes some additional programs that could potentially cover the costs. Among the latest, they have a policy under consideration. I want to say allegedly because they haven't done it yet, but they are considering a policy to use money from foreign aid to deport the illegal immigrants. And this is interesting because what they're doing, they're taking this system that was already in place to facilitate mass migration, and they're using that exact same system to possibly facilitate mass deportation. Let me explain. The Washington Post says this. It says the Trump administration has devised plans to spend up to $250 million earmarked for foreign assistance to fund instead the removal and return of people from active conflict zones, including 700,000 Ukrainian and Haitian migrants who fled to the United States amid extreme ongoing violence back home, according to draft internal documents reviewed by the Washington Post. On that point, I would add, when they say conflict zones and they say specifically Haitians and Ukrainians, I would say that they're using Ukraine and Haiti as examples of a broader picture. The actual narrative of how they define a conflict zone can be much broader. This could be people fleeing gang violence, like from, again, like Honduras or something like that. They could say it's people fleeing, they've even in the past stretched it as far as saying it's people fleeing global warming. So unless we actually see the documents on how they define a conflict zone, I would be curious on whether that is limited to Ukrainians and Haitians, because the language here is suggesting that they're just making examples of that, right? But they add this. They say the proposal, which has not been previously reported, was in development before a related May 5th announcement from the Department of Homeland Security declaring that immigrants who volunteer to self-deport to their home countries would be eligible for $1,000 stipends from the U.S. government. And while prior administrations have supported using taxpayer funds for the voluntary reparation of migrants, the proposal developed under President Donald Trump is unusual because it includes people who escaped, they claim, from some of the most dangerous parts of the world and appears intended to bypass the International Organization for Migration, the IOM. If that sounds familiar, it's because when I was doing my research in Panama and all across the United States and into Latin America, even into Mexico, the IOM, the International Organization for Migration, that is the organization that the United States was paying to facilitate mass illegal immigration. And so this is where it gets interesting. Again, they say that this appears intended to bypass the International Organization for Migration, IOM, a UN-affiliated body that typically aids in returning migrants to their homes. On that point, I briefly mentioned, you might have seen my documentaries, my features. I exposed this. The IOM was one of the big United Nations bodies that's been running the operations to funnel illegal immigrants into the United States. This is not like they're doing it secretly. They have public financial documents that just state this. They also fund a lot of NGOs to help them. And they weren't doing this in a rogue way. This was part of an agreement the United States itself had joined, actually several agreements, among them being the Global Compact for Migration, and we were funding it. American taxpayer dollars were going to this organization to finance the mass movement of people into the United States. The exact same organization and structure and agreements are the ones funneling people into Western Europe and into Canada as well. That's just how it works. And what's interesting with this newly announced plan, at least according to the Washington Post, because they're citing documents are not being shown to the public yet. Again, take it for what it's worth because this is their word effectively. It seems the Trump plan, though, is to turn the tables. And this seems very similar to what they did when they repurposed the CBP One app into the CBP Home app, right? How did that work? The CBP One app, which if you were in another country, you could download this on your phone and you could schedule your entry into the United States and apply for temporary protection status. That was one of the big systems they put in place to facilitate the mass movement of people into the United States. The Trump administration took that exact same app, updated it. It's now called the CBP Home app, and rather than facilitating entry to the United States, you can facilitate your departure from the United States. Because they've also they're taking away the temporary protection status, then everybody who's on that system is now a criminal if they don't self-deport, right? And so what they're doing here as well, it seems they're taking the systems that were used to facilitate the mass illegal immigration, and they're transforming those exact same systems into programs to facilitate mass deportation. A very interesting move across the board. We'll see if they do this all across because that's what they're suggesting they're doing here. But another part of this is that the Trump administration is now also giving official removal orders to every illegal immigrant. They're saying aliens in general now legally need to register to begin removing themselves from the country, and they need to demonstrate that they're taking, again, practical steps to self-deport. Any of them who now choose to stay, any of them who do not self-deport, who violate those orders, they're facing criminal charges and fines, really, really big fines. In one of the cases that now just came out, remember, I reported previously, they were saying retroactively enforced up to 4 years, you could pay a fine of up to $1 million. One of the cases that has now actually taken place, this is actually happening, an individual was ordered to self-deport like 20 years ago, and they're retroactively having to pay the fines for 20 years. This is one interesting here. It says this: an illegal immigrant is currently looking at $1.82 million in fines because they violated a removal order that was given 20 years ago. 20 years ago. CBS News said this: an undocumented immigrant, that's what they call them, they mean an illegal immigrant, who resides in Florida is facing a more than $1.82 million fine for failing to leave the country after receiving a removal order 20 years ago. They say CBS News has learned. And they say, according to the notice sent May 9th by the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Civil Fines Department and provided to CBS News, the 41-year-old Florida woman and mother of 3, who CBS News has chosen not to name, was charged $500 for every day that she has remained in the U.S. since the removal order was issued in April 2005. $500 every day going back to 2005, running up a total of $1.821,350. And it says, in a May 20th statement provided to CBS News in response to the fine, an ICE spokesperson said that undocumented immigrants, right, illegal immigrants, quote, who violate the nation's immigration laws and fail to comply with a removal order issued by a Department of Justice immigration judge will face legal consequences, such as fines or imprisonment. The best option is to comply with the law and leave the United States. And they say the DHS spokesperson also encouraged undocumented immigrants, again, illegal immigrants, to, quote, use the CBP Home app to self-deport. Now, that is very interesting because, you have a lot of people who've been here 20 years or more who, again, nothing's happened to them. Like, there's been nothing in place to really self-deport them or go after them. But a lot of them, very early on, did have deportation orders, and many of them have been violating that for a long time. What is interesting now is that these fines will not only cover the cost of their deportation, it'll cover the cost of a lot of other deportations as well. And it also creates a lot of legal incentive to maybe take that $1,000 in that free airplane ticket. The problem is, of course, these people have things built up here. This woman, of course, has 3 children here, probably American citizens because of birthright citizenship, we would assume. Or it could be assumed, I should say. And also, they can seize their property. They can seize their property. And so if a person here has bought a home or bought a car, that could be seized. And in addition to the fines, not even to cover the fines, but in addition to the fines. So they look to lose everything and also never be able to return to the United States. It is up to 20 years. They say some even for life can never return to the United States. And there will probably be a way to, I don't know, fine them internationally possibly to make sure that they pay those fines and those debts. This is actually really serious. But what's interesting here is that they're actually doing it. They're actually doing it. This was something they announced. What is now taking place is beyond what they announced. The original announcement was up to 4 years retroactively, $1 million. This is 20 years retroactively and much higher than $1 million. Now, look, on that point as well, though, the first free flight for illegal immigrants has now successfully brought a batch of people home. Look, it was not a lot of people. The Trump administration is saying there are 20 million illegal immigrants. They're celebrating now because 65 people decided to self-deport. And these people were brought back to Honduras and Colombia mainly. But this was also the first of what will likely be many more flights for people taking steps to self-deport. And this is also part of the program where they're given $1,000 once the deportation takes place. So they get home, they're given $1,000. Better than losing $1.8 million, but you be the judge, right? All right, everyone, that said, if you have questions, comments, leave them in the chat. Let's jump into some questions. And please don't forget to hit the like button also. Let's see here. First off, John Monroe, you're saying, why are businesses allowed to hire illegals openly? Okay, look, this is the gray area, because let me put it this way. This is the quiet part out loud that nobody wants to talk about. And this is Republicans, this is Democrats, this is everybody. Republicans used to be a little more in favor of illegal immigration because it's good for the workforce. If you're going back to like the Bush era stuff, it was the Democrats, like I'm talking like Bill Clinton era, who were more against illegal immigration. Democrats only changed their policies against illegal immigration during the Obama administration, and that was only because they found that like 80% of Latinos voted Democrat. Some of Obama's advisors were basically saying, if we give them all citizenship, we'll never lose another election. Recent findings with Latino voters show otherwise, because a lot of them are voting Trump now. So that whole thing is off the table. But the quiet part out loud is this. Even with Trump, and I think that's why it's why Trump is not bringing back the older laws where it used to be a crime to hire an illegal immigrant. I think it's why he's not taking that step yet. A lot of industries do basically depend on illegal immigrants. And even in Trump's current laws on deportations, he has made exceptions to certain industries. And that's kind of that's the quiet part that nobody's really talking about. Now, if they do want to if they really do want to make everybody self-deport, I mean, they're kind of putting stuff in place. I mentioned before, they're looking right now to put a tax on remittances. It's not a big tax, it's 5%. That does eliminate a lot of the incentive to come here and work illegally. A 5% tax, these days it's not a lot of money. In the past, that would have been enough of a tax to make us throw the British tea off the boats. You know what I mean? Yeah, we've been conditioned to accept a much higher threshold of taxes. These days, we would not call a 5% tax a very large tax. Trump is talking about possibly making that much higher, maybe even putting stuff in place to prevent remittances, which is where people come here, they work, they send money home. Even if they're illegal immigrants, they send money home, and there's a whole process for it, right? That's a big deal. That would eliminate some of the incentives for people coming here, not entirely. If they really, really wanted to make all of these people self-deport, all you have to do is remove the financial element to it. You remove the free housing programs, remove the free medical programs. Even California is doing that now, by the way, making it so illegal immigrants cannot get free health care. In California, it's mainly because they don't have the money for it. It's creating too much of a financial burden on the state. They don't have the money for it. Remove the benefits. And if they want to take it a step further, you create, again, financial punishments. The fines are a big deal for some people, but they might still think they can gamble with it. If you remove their ability to get Social Security, disability, social welfare, child support stuff, everything, you eliminate a lot of them on welfare, and that may force a lot of them out because it's not talked about much, but a lot of them get welfare. I personally know some illegal immigrants in California who get several programs for welfare. Several programs. They get it. You eliminate that, a lot of them will leave. But if you really want to make a lot of them leave, you have to also make it so that businesses will get fined or be charged with a crime for hiring them in the first place. There are some regulations in place currently with that, which is also why there's a business of them buying stolen identities. So the other side of it, right, is if they want to make it illegal for a business to hire an illegal immigrant, even if the whole unspoken truth that even Republicans don't want to end that entirely, even Trump, they have created certain exceptions for certain industries where they can still hire illegal immigrants and nothing's going to happen to them. They have done that. They would also have to make it so the Social Security system has more oversight to prevent identity theft. Because if they were to just make it illegal tomorrow to hire an illegal immigrant, you would have a massive boom in identity theft. Because there's already industries for that where they can buy stolen Social Security numbers. It would not totally solve the problem until they fix that. And so that's some of the different layers of why I think that's not happening right now. And also on the other point too, Trump wants to create a fast-track system for legal immigration. So while you do see a lot of people getting deported, and you probably will, you're going to see a lot of people getting legal immigration, green cards, and so on. I think they're also stalling that because they need to change some of the laws on the immigration system. I think Trump is a bit hesitant he's hesitant to do that until, as Marco Rubio has been stating publicly, what's he been saying? They want to create a merit-based immigration system. They want to get rid of chain migration, and they also want to get rid of birthright citizenship. And so if they want to have a system to bring in probably huge numbers of people, it probably will be a lot of people. If they want to bring in huge numbers of people as legal immigrants, they don't want them using chain migration to bring their entire families over who are going to go on welfare. They don't want that, which is what's been happening. They also don't want to have it so that they come here, they bring their whole families over, they have tons of kids, and the kids become citizens, and it changes the entire cultural and political makeup of our country. They don't want that either. So they need to change those other factors first before they do that. And I think that's why you don't see it happening right now. They need to change the immigration laws, and they need to change the Social Security laws to make that work, in my opinion. Moldigard, you're saying, do you think businesses will start to reclassify wages as tips to make income tax a thing of the past? That'd be pretty funny. So I should note, no tax on tips was passed. No tax on tips was passed, I believe up to $25,000. That's pretty great. I can tell you as someone who, look, when I say I used to work in this and that, it's because I used to work, every summer I'd work for my dad, and I was working a full-time job every summer since I was like 12 years old. You know what I mean? So I was working every summer in my dad's restaurants, and I'd help my dad do construction different times. He used to do solar heating repairs. I didn't physically do that kind of work, but I'd be with him when he did it. I know I can build houses and stuff because my dad does carpentry. But every summer I used to work in my dad's restaurants, and I can tell you, tips at restaurants used to be fantastic. You used to make so much money on tips. People don't tip like they used to. I told you my dad had a restaurant recently called Don Kahuna's. I was helping him out. I went down there for a little bit to help him out. I was working the front counter at my dad's restaurant, taking orders. I forget how hard that job is. People are mean to customer service. People are mean to service staff, and people don't tip like they used to. We were working whole days, huge lines of customers. People these days barely tip, and I think part of that changed under COVID. I think part of it changed under COVID because they started asking to tip on everything. I go to the airport these days, and you're working with a digital kiosk. You're buying, a bag of, you're buying a drink and a bag of beef jerky, right? Which is what I usually buy for an airplane ride. I buy water and beef jerky. And you don't talk to a single human being, and you go to a kiosk, and the kiosk asks you for a tip. Why would I tip a kiosk? Why would I do that? Who in their right minds tips when there's been no service? And I think because of that, because everywhere you go now, they ask you for a tip, a lot of people don't do it. I think we've gotten, is it just me? Is it just me? How many of you tip a kiosk? Does anybody here do that? Why do you do it? Tell me. Look, I tip for service. I will still tip if I get a coffee and the the person behind the counter actually does some work. I'll probably tip them. If I get sit-down service at a restaurant, I will tip. I'm not going to tip them if I don't get the sit-down service typically. Anyways, point with this. Back to the main point. No tax on tips is a thing again, meaning if you tip, you can actually tip people and they don't have to pay it up to $25,000. I've known enough people in the service industry, they're probably not gonna file it anyway. But it does leave another door open. It does, and this is probably why there was tax on tips to begin with. It leaves a door open for certain businesses to reclassify payment as tips, which is, Moldigard notes, some businesses might do that. In the restaurant business, that's actually not uncommon. Restaurants, which is why we have tips in America, some restaurants will underpay their staff because part of their income is from tips. And what they do effectively with that is they basically reclassify wages as tips. You probably will see more businesses do that if people still start tipping like they used to, which they don't right now, so we'll see. Skyboys, you're saying, the funny thing about this is they kill off the farmer. Oh yeah, so you're talking about the South African stuff. You're saying the funny thing about this is they kill off the farmer, and then the rebels don't know how to farm, and have no idea where or how to farm. South Africa will have to import their food. It's true. So this does happen. And as you saw in that video, what's the guy's name? Malema, the communist leader there of the Economic Freedom Fighters Party. Freedom fighters. Freeing your soul from your body. That's the only thing communists have ever freed anybody from, is the constraints of the human body when they murder you and seize your assets. That's the only kind of freedom they've ever brought. And it's the only kind of freedom they're bringing to South. Well, no, I take that back. They're bringing that kind of freedom to South Africa, but they're also freeing South Africa from a food supply. They are liberating them from a food supply, and that's about all they're going to accomplish. They've realized they need to be freed from the constraints of labor and the fruits of labor, which is having food on your plate at the end of the day. But that is happening, by the way, and I've seen accounts of this. I've seen accounts of this. I didn't mention them actually, but and this is not a race thing. But for example, I've read some reports by a lot of black activists in South Africa making this point. And what happens is when they take not even when they kill the farmer, when they take the land and give it off to, like, I believe it's the Bantu typically get it. The crops and the farms fail almost immediately. Imagine this. You're some rebel with this African, communist organization. You go into a farm, you murder and brutally, torture the people there. You kill them all. You put their baby in a microwave, which they do. You do that kind of stuff. You commit absolute horrors. And then you're like, great, I have a farm now. And then you come to a very rough realization, which is the bane of all young communists. You find that you have to work, and you find that it's hard labor. And all those college communists, this is oftentimes the hardest realization they have, is that they got to work. Communism is about labor, right? It's about labor, and they find that farm work is really hard. Not only is it really hard, but there's a lot of technicalities to it that you're not going to know instinctually. Like I would like to believe I could run a farm. I know deep down I would not be able to unless I really, really studied it. It is complicated running a farm. You need to know a lot of things, not just about crops, but also about animals in order to have a successful farm. And the people taking it over, they don't have that information. And so what happens is they take it over and it fails almost instantly. It's something that will create a food crisis in South Africa. And has been, by the way. All right, JNS 1970, you're saying, as Sun Tzu stated, he will win who knows when to fight and when not to fight. Yeah, that's right. To know when to fight, to know when to not fight, right? That's one of the key issues. Good point. Another question here from good old Seymour Butts. Thanks for being here, Seymour. You're saying famine is not used to reduce population. It is used for ideological power. And that is absolutely true. And I would point to, it's used as a form of control. I think it's used for a few things. It's used to sever people from religion and used to sever people from kind of like their culture. But it's also used as a tool of dependence. If you want to enslave a person, all you need to do is remove their ability of independence. If you render a person incapable of independence, you will own them, right? And there was actually an analogy of that that a lot of Russians used for Joseph Stalin. This is oftentimes painted as if it was a true story. I think it was an anecdote. I don't believe this was a true story. I believe it was an anecdote. There were two stories with it. One was that Joseph Stalin had a sick humor where he would he would put green tinted glasses on a horse and place in front of the horse a bale of rotten grass. Rotten grass. But because the glasses were tinted green, the horse would see beautiful green grass. And the horse would, of course, be disappointed when it tasted that grass and found out it was all rotten. I don't believe he actually did that. I believe it was an analogy, personally. That was a very common story in Russia. And I believe it was common because it was the experience of many people. They were told that there'd be this beautiful future if only they went along with good old grand leader Joseph Stalin, and they found out it was a massive deception. The entire system was rotten, and they were told it was this big, beautiful green bale of hay, right? Same thing with, there was another story of Joseph Stalin. It said that he was walking with some of his officials. Again, I believe this was an anecdote of the experience of the people of Russia. I don't believe this was something that physically took place. But I believe I believe that it was a popular story because it did relate to the personal experience of the people of Russia. The story was that Joseph Stalin was walking, right, with his officials who he had not yet disappeared. These are the ones he didn't disappear yet, right? That would come later. Walking with them, and one of them asks, "How do you control a population? How do you control a population?" And what Joseph Stalin does is he says, "Let me show you." And he goes and he picks up a chicken, which, if you've ever been on a farm, a lot of chickens are easy to pick up. You don't have to chase them if you do it nicely. Picks up a chicken, and he grabs it by the neck and tears out all of the chicken's feathers, rips out every one of its feathers. And then he places the chicken down, and he takes a handful of grain, of feed, and he gives it to the chicken. And he says, "Now this chicken will depend on me for the rest of its life." And it was an analogy, because what he did was this. The chicken, because of what he did to it, will probably not be able to survive. It will not live through the winter, and it will need outside assistance to survive. It will need external assistance if it is going to live. And what Stalin did was created the circumstance, the condition that removed its ability to survive. And so if it wants to survive, it needs to depend on him. He manufactured dependence. He manufactured dependence. And that is what communism does also. They want people to be dependent. They want people to not know how to take care of themselves. They want people who cannot live without the party, who don't know how to work hard, who don't know how to take care of themselves, who don't know how to get out on their 2 feet and deal with the hardships of the world, who can deal with these slings and arrows of outrageous misfortune and deal with mean words from people without having to go cry to the government to punish people for offending them. If you have people who can deal with difficulty, they don't need communism. If you have people who can deal with people maybe calling them a racist name every now and then, you don't need communism, because the people can deal with it themselves. And if you look at a lot of traditional cultures, they used to teach that, right? Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. An independent person, a person capable of sustaining themselves, a person capable of dealing with hardship, a person capable of working hard, will naturally not want a system that requires dependence. And I'll give you one more analogy on this. There was a meme going around, and it's a picture of 2 lions. One of these lions is a lion in a cage. The other lion is a lion free on the savannah. And the picture says this: the lion in the cage has free health care. The lion in the cage has security. The lion in the cage has every form of government programs and self-sustaining programs to keep it happy, to keep it fed, to keep it medicated, and to make sure it has everything it needs to protect it from the possibility of any harm coming to it. The lion on the savannah has none of that. The lion on the savannah does not have a guarantee that food will be there every day. The lion on the savannah does not have the guarantee that if it gets sick, it's going to survive. It does not have free medical care. The lion on the savannah does not have a mate provided to it. The lion on the savannah does not have a nice warm little place to sleep every night given to it. The lion on the savannah has none of those guarantees. And which would you rather be? Which would you rather be? It's a question of, do you want safety or do you want freedom? Which do you prefer? And you can choose. And I would say for most people that is also the choice. Do you want freedom or do you want socialism? And you can't have both. You have to choose one or the other. Last question here. Emotion 007, you're saying communism has infiltrated into South Africa, and guess who is behind the scenes pulling the strings? The CCP, right? The Chinese Communist Party. That is true. Actually, on that point, I know that the Trump administration diplomatically, in fact, I've been thinking about doing a piece on this. Maybe I will in the future. They're talking about extending U.S. aid, U.S. support, and U.S. programs to Africa because the Chinese Communist Party has been very active on it for a very long time. The CCP has gotten a lot of the countries in South Africa into debt traps. The CCP controls a lot of the leadership of African countries through bribery, and it's open. They don't even try to hide it. They don't even try to hide it. They control a massive number of politicians in Africa overall. The CCP has been taking advantage of them, and interestingly, a lot of African countries are starting to realize that like that horse presented with a rotting bale of hay and given a nice little pair of green-tinted glasses, the people of Africa have realized the CCP has presented them with a rotten bale of grass and told them that it's green and nice. And they don't want it like they did before. They're rejecting it. And so it is opening the doors for America to do a bit more there. And, we'll see how that goes. Folks, just a few notes. We will not have an episode on Friday, tomorrow. I'm moving the show to 4 days a week, and this will be temporary because pretty soon we're going to have a feature. I'm getting back into doing features, investigations, maybe long-form interviews. I want to do stuff that's not purely within the normal daily grind of the news cycle. I want to do... Again, I'm an investigative journalist. I want to do stuff that's more substantial. Don't worry, Crossroads is not going anywhere. We'll still have the normal show. But again, it's going to be 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday. Fridays, I need a day to start working on the feature content, and so I'm going to be working on that. After a little bit, once I get the wheels rolling, we'll start having, again, features, documentaries, investigations, and other things. I mentioned if you have anything you would like me to investigate, if you have any topics you would like to see me cover, please leave it in the chat. Tell me. We are keeping track of that. We're making notes of it, me and my team. Also, folks, we will not have an episode on Monday. Next Monday, it's Memorial Day. I want to give my staff a break. We have a few people here with us. Great. We have Ian in the chat, video editor, my producer Melina. We're going to take Memorial Day off. I hope you all celebrate as well. I saw a parade yesterday. The different veterans groups, and so happy Memorial Day, folks. Enjoy your Memorial Day. Hope you spend time with your friends and family. I will see you next Tuesday. Also, don't forget tomorrow we will still have prime time. So if you want to watch prime time, that will still be taking place every Friday. So if you want to go in the chat there and hang out, you can. That show is 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern time. So if you want to watch prime time, be sure to tune in. It's more of an easygoing show. We laugh and joke around a lot more. And it's me and Roman from Epic Times, and then a few of the staff from NTD. We have a lot of fun doing it. I hope you all enjoy it too. That'll be tomorrow, 8 o'clock p.m. So that said, folks, enjoy your weekend. We'll be back with the live show Tuesday, 10:30 a.m. Eastern time, and happy Memorial Day. That said, please don't forget to share this episode. Thank you so much, as always, for being here, folks. One sec. One quick thing. Also, please, sorry, I know I keep delaying this. If you haven't yet, let me know what you'd like me to cover. Also, for Memorial Day, folks, any of you who served, thanks to you. Thank you for helping make this country great. I grew up partly in a military family. You know, I grew up in an extended family household. My grandpa's a Marine officer. A lot of uncles and great-grandparents and so on, you know, served, and I was raised to deeply respect the military. I love the military, and thank you all for doing what you did, really. I know people give you all a hard time, and maybe not so much these days, but you know what? Thank God you did what you did, because the entire world would look like North Korea if we hadn't. Thank God the world is not living under a bunch of dirty communist dictatorships. Thank God. And thank God for the U.S. military for making that not happen, really. So thank you all for what you did. And again, folks, see you on Tuesday. Happy Memorial Day. Have a great weekend. And as always, please take care of yourselves, stay informed, and stay free. Thank you.